right, what's up, everyone? This is Thomas Bird here with another video of Pro Tabletop. Today, we're talking about Necrons, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you haven't watched our Space Marine video, go and check that out. And first things first, make sure you hit that subscribe and notification bell if you want to see more content. We're constantly putting out new content. Hit that so you'll be notified as soon as we put out a new video. But today, I'm not the Necron guy. I know how to beat the Necrons, but I don't play Necrons, so I can't be up here pretending to talk about Necrons, and we're talking about the new book. So I got some of my friends in, Red Powell and Kelly Wallace. They're joining me here. These guys play Necrons. They know the Necrons. So we're going to have them do the talking and tell us what's up in the new Necron book. So say hello, guys, and introduce yourselves.
Kelly, you can go first.
All right, I'm Kelly Wallace. I haven't won any big tournaments with Necrons, but I've been playing Necrons a long time. I love the army. I played them a lot right there at the end of 8th edition. I'm excited they got a new book. We'll see how it stands up as everybody else moves into 9th edition codexes. But we've been through Red and I have been through it and bouncing ideas off each other all the time. So we can't claim to be 9th edition Necron experts. I don't know who can, but we're ready to start running with them.
Yeah, and as mentioned, my name's Red Powell. I am a
little bit of a Necron celebrity in our midst, right? Like you did really well in ITC.
Yeah, I had a good run in not last year, but the year before that. I was the #1 ranked Necron faction player in the ITC worldwide. And I went 31st in the world, actually ranked in ITC. And so, that's not everything, but it was a goal of mine. And Necrons weren't exactly, they've always, especially through 8th edition, I think everybody can agree, they had a lot to work through. Their codex wasn't horrible, but they only got one rendition. I can't say that they got 2 codexes and a bunch of supplements unloaded for them. But they did really well for when I played them, and I enjoyed them a lot. And so I'm really excited to get back to them now in this edition.
Yeah, that's right. I'm only played one game against Necron, Red's Necrons, and he beat me. We're 0-1. He never did give me that rematch. He's like he took his win and ran off. So I have to make sure I get another shot at him when he's in town. But that's good. So what we're doing today, if you haven't watched the other video, is we're kind of going to go through the book and hit the highlights. Right? What's good? What's bad? What's ugly? Kind of what's changed from the old book to the new, something that you can kind of look through or look forward to when the new book comes out. If you're a big Necron fan, or if you are scared of Necrons and want to see what to look out for, these guys have poured through the book and kind of give us their thoughts. And I kind of wanted to have 2 guys on that do Necrons because they're not always going to agree. So you guys can definitely feel free to argue about what's really good and actually what's not so good. So let's jump into the list of good. So really we're talking about, maybe it's a buff or it's a change for the better, or maybe it's just fantastic, So right off the bat, right, Necron is kind of like your chapter tactics. You have your dynasties. So what do we have here, or what's changing about the dynasties?
So just to start off, through 8th, I played Sautek pretty much exclusively, and I guess we'll talk about Sautek a little bit later when we get to the ugly. But Red has always been an advocate to play the Nihilak dynasty. Oh, not Nihilak. Sorry, excuse me. Nefrek dynasty.
Yeah, Nefrek was my dynasty of choice. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember Nefrek in 8th edition, they're the guys that when they advance, they always do 6. They move like Wraiths. They run through everything. And in 9th edition, before this book came out, I played a test game with them, and they were fantastic in 9th edition because they could get all over the table in one turn, no matter what the terrain is like, no matter what the enemy tries to do to block them. They are everywhere. And they've only gotten better. In fact, I think of all the dynasties out there, they've gotten the biggest boost because now they not only do that, but they all have a 6-up invulnerable save at all times, which is just fantastic. I think they're a really big winner in the dynasty lottery. Not super excited about some of the other ones. Not bad, nothing like Sautek. But I know Red thinks there's some other stuff in there too. But I'll let him explain.
Yeah. So, and I call it I was looking at it, I was putting this list together. It's really the triple N dynasties, right? You've got Nephrak, Nihilok, and Novok. And I'd like to put them in that order, arguably. I think there's a lot of weight in Nihilok's um, in their and there's a lot of other things that build into the trait outside of just the trait itself, right? It's not just the trait, it's what comes with it, because you've also got a stratagem, you've got a warlord trait, you've got a relic, and you've got a bonus to command protocols. And so when you're looking at these, it's a really big deal as far as which one does what to where and how it all plays throughout. And so Nephrak for myself, I mean, that like Kelly said, spot on with that 6+ invuln. I mean, that's just such a great add-on. And then also huge deal is that they changed it. So no longer is it just advancing. Because I tell you what, it was awesome
Right.
having warriors or immortals go and advance, an automatic 6 inches moving through really terrain and other units. But now they've added it so when they fall back through units and terrain. And that's huge. I mean, you just got around the desperate breakout stratagem. You offer so much more options, especially when you're using a tide wall of warriors to essentially hold something in place, and then their ability to fall back is just such a big deal. And that's where I really think Nephret comes into play. You look at Nihilok, so I kind of get where your reservations might be, Kelly, with Nihilok, because their other bonus, while it's really cool, the armor penetration negation, it's only when it's in their deployment zone. So as soon as the Nihilok steps out of their deployment zone, they lose that entire trait buff in regards to reducing armor penetration characteristics of -1 to 0. And so that's unfortunate. But the other big thing being that they do grant OBSEC, and I think that's huge. I'd go into Novok. I'm going to put Novok as kind of on the threshold of good. I really do like it, though. It's very melee oriented, and I think it opens up the door for melee builds. But we can talk a little more about that in a little bit. But anyways, so Nihilok is again also the command protocol for Nihilok, and its stratagem. Man, its stratagem is so good. It's 1 CP to allow you to shoot and conduct an action at the same time, and
Ooh, yeah.
so right? I mean, that's awesome,
That's
especially when you're running like big blobs of warriors and you don't have a lot of other small infantry units to do your actions for you.
yeah.
That's a really big deal.
That's a tough one for the Marines, right? You like, do I have a throwaway unit that can just sit around doing nothing but an action? Like I need my guys to be doing work, and I can't have them just like bailing out for a turn. Now, command
Yeah.
protocols, right? That's a whole new thing for the new edition, right? So, like, I'm not familiar with the details of it. Like, what is that, or how does it work? Do you have to like write down what you have to pick before the game starts and guess?
So,
So
so yeah, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves in regards, but we'll just say that
Oh,
the
it's in the
command
bad section.
it is in
yeah,
the bad section, and part of that is the setup, in my opinion. But Kelly, I'll let you lead on it.
yeah. I mean, command protocols is I guess it's what the Necrons get instead of the doctrines like Marines get. So it's a buff that the whole army gets, assuming it's all Necrons, that varies from turn to turn, sort of like doctrines. Necrons, however, they get 6 of these command protocols, and there are exceptions to this based on special rules, but basically they pick 5 of them and they put them in order. So they decide which one's going to happen turn 1, which one's going to happen turn 2, and so on. And they're locked in at that point. So you need to plan your game all 5 turns out in advance, and then there's the 6th one that you don't use. And they do different things. One of them is a good doctrine. Command protocol helps assaults, and one of them helps resurrection protocols, and one of them helps saves, and so they all have 2 different abilities. Normally you get to pick one of those abilities to be active, but each one is associated with a dynasty, so it gets to do both of them when their special dynasty one is active. And then it's the way it works is it creates an aura around all of the characters that have the noble keyword, that buffs. Is it just buffs core units? Is that right, Red?
So it is, and it's actually a pretty crucial thing, because I actually don't think I'm pulling it up right now, but it is. So the way that it works, it's actually not noble. It's within 6 inches of a friendly Necron character model,
Oh, it's
uh,
any character. Okay.
excluding Satan shards, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually it's any unit that does it. And so the other
Okay.
thing is, to your point, if any noble units from your army are on the battlefield, so you have to have a noble unit on the battlefield. You have to be all the same detachment, and then everyone has to be within 6 inches of a Necron character, not a Satan shard, and then it's any units. It's not just core. But
Right.
that's a lot of terms and conditions, and that goes back
Yeah.
into why I put it in the bad pile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
jumping the gun there. Yeah, that does sound like a lot. And then just pre-playing the game. I guess once you kind of start playing it, you probably have it down.
So you do. I mean, I admit I've play tested with what we've seen so far, and I've done a couple games at this point, and you really like you do get a feel for where they're at, right? They're, like Kelly was saying, there's one that so there's one. Take the Nefrek one, right? It gives you. It's called the Sudden Storm. So you get both directives if you're playing Nefrek, and the first directive is add 1 to the move characteristic, so everybody moves an extra inch, which is pretty good given that if they're within range of, say, like an overlord or something, he's giving them an extra inch anyways. So that now makes the like warriors, for example, are now moving 7 inches, which it can be a pretty big deal. And then directive 2 is going back to that other stratagem, and this is Nefrek, not Nihilak. But if the unit is performing an action, it can make attacks with ranged weapons without that action failing. And so the whole army gets that directive as long as they meet the terms and conditions, which is a pretty big deal.
But one of those conditions is to be near a character.
Correct.
So you're
within 6 inches.
When we get into other units, like and it's 9th edition. So we've all played some 9th edition games. You have to be all over the table usually to be in the hunt for the points. And your Tomb Blades or your Wraiths or whatever that you're shooting off to go contest or take a far off objective,
they're not going to get those.
Might not have
right?
a guy nearby.
Right. Oh yeah. I could see how that could be tricky.
It is going to be tricky.
All right, so digressing back to the good, since we kind of stepped off into the bad, I kind of set that up. Sorry about that. We were talking about dynasties. So I mean, we had the kind of the core basic dynasties, right? Like your basic first founding chapters. If I go back to my Marine parlance, so what about the successor stuff? Don't they have like custom dynasties where there good things there?
So yes, Necrons. We'll be salty for a minute. Necrons got the short end of the stick in Psychic Awakening. They didn't get custom dynasties like everybody else did, but so they're getting them now. And I guess that's kind of good because we've been spared the problem that I think everybody's going to see when they get their 9th edition books, which is that the parts that you put together to make your choose your own adventure dynasties have been toned down from what they look like in the 8th edition books in Psychic Awakening. But they're good. I mean, I think there's some interesting stuff in there that let you do to get pieces of the big dynasties, and then some stuff that's not part of any of the big dynasties that also looks really interesting. I know Red had a few specific examples that I more or less agree with.
And so it's also important to talk about the differences. What I would call I think it's a very good balancing mechanic for the Necrons. It'd be crazy if they applied this to other armies that might have come out at the same time. So with the custom traits, you pick from 2 lists. Essentially, you have 2 trees, if you want to call it that. You pick from one, and then you got to pick from the other. And so you don't get to double tap on some of these great ones. And so, starting in one side here, so they've got like the custom dynasty traits, and then they've got the circumstances of awakening, which is cool. I do like the whole approach to it. But so this one, I mean, this is a pretty big deal out the gate. Is this the Eternal Conquerors is essentially just like how the Space Marines work. How you could kind of make something close to one of the other chapters. Like you could pick one of the Salamander's traits or something like that, or
Right.
the just like that. So Eternal Conquerors is essentially the best part of Nihilak, which is the OBSEC ability. So all models in the army become objective secured, and then any objective secured units that already have it essentially count as 2 models, which is a really big deal for mobs of warriors and things like that. So I think that's a really good one. This next one I was kind of excited about for some of the potential abilities, and I've got a caveat come down the road for one of Kelly's favorite or favored units, I'll say, where I think this comes into play better. If you don't have it, I think it makes that unit suck. But it's this rad wreathed aura, which is while an enemy unit is within 1 inch of this unit, you subtract 1 from the toughness characteristic. That's a huge deal. When you're taking Space Marines from Gravis Armor T5 down to T4, or Space Marines in general from T4 to T3, right? Especially when all your warriors are strength 4, or take like destroyers, destroyer Scorpec destroyers on base are typically around strength 6. And so when you take a Space Marine down to T3, I mean, you're talking about wounding on 2s all of a sudden. I think that's a massive, big deal. If you. So the other thing is with these dynastic traditions, the custom ones, they don't get protocol. You can still use command protocols, but you don't get command protocol benefits like you did for the other ones. And so you've got to weigh that out. Yeah, you've got to weigh that out. And then going into circumstances of awakening, I know there's a lot of stuff you go back and forth on. There's like a Canoptek, so wraiths, spiders, scarabs. There's something that builds into them. There's another one that's relentlessly expansionist. This is the one that everybody's talking about. This is huge. This is really good, and everybody, Necron players and people playing against Necron players, needs to be aware of at the start of the first battle round, before the first turn begins. So you already know who's going first at this point. Units with this code can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. The entire army gets to do that.
The whole army scout moves.
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Is there any restrictions on like you can't get within 9 inches or anything? Like
when I said 6 inches, that was period, end of ability.
Yowza.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a gotcha moment. You don't know what's going on there. Holy cow.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. Especially because Necrons, I'm not going to say they struggle in movement. I think they're actually brought in line, like pretty base. They don't have a ton of stuff. They're not Eldar flying across the field or anything. But they definitely, I don't think they're suffering in movement as much. And now with this thing, they're definitely not suffering. And that's just people are not going to be ready for that until it happens to them.
Yeah, and on that movement point, they are most of the infantry units are move 5, but now all of the nobles have. It used to be you had to do the the My Will Be Done to give one unit a buff, and now it's an aura, so it buffs everybody near the noble with +1 to their move.
Yeah, that's right.
So the other one I think is stand out there though, Red, is interplanetary invaders. I don't know if the Necron armor lists are gonna rise up again. It's 9th edition. Our Necron tanks enough, but what it does is it lets tanks fall back and shoot. Lets the Necron vehicles fall back and shoot at -1, or if they stay in combat, they shoot with no to hit penalty.
Oh, no tagging them there, huh? That's
so
pretty big.
And some of those, I mean, you take into account some of those vehicles can be pretty mean up close. Take like a Doomsday Arc that's putting 20 shots of rapid fire into you and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a good thing for them. They can definitely make it work.
Yeah. A lot of the Necron vehicles got a decent bump up on either the profile of the gun, the damage output of the gun, or the number of shots. So, that's another thing to look for. So you might see some, and that's especially, you have to do a custom dynasty to get either one of those. None of the regular dynasties
do it. Yeah,
have those. And just Red made a side comment about how Necron custom dynasties compare to say custom Space Marine chapter tactics. And Space Marines have one giant pool that they can pick any 2 things they want out of. Necrons have to pick one from column A and one from column B. But what you see if you look across both codexes now, though, is you see that GW has toned down the custom dynasties or chapter tactics.
Yeah, for sure. They definitely water down the Marine ones. So it's really almost better just to take the main chapters than try to build your own.
Right. Well, so everybody and their cousin, no matter whether they were Eldar, taking that Master Artificers or whatever, where you could reroll a hit and a wound every time unit attacked. Well, that's gone.
Yeah.
Right. Necrons have a custom dynasty to reroll a hit, and Necrons have a custom dynasty trait to reroll a wound, but they're in the same pool, so you can't actually stack them. So,
yeah, I like that.
And Marines are the same. So again, and this is something important when you're talking about any review of a codex, including this one. The only thing we can really compare the Necron codex to fairly is the old Necron Codex and the Marine Codex, because nobody else has a 9th edition Codex yet.
Yeah,
That's right.
You know, so when we see things that look like they're a tone down, or you know, they may be in our category, something that Necrons used to do for free, and now it's been moved into a stratagem they have to pay for and can only do one per turn or something. Well, for all we know, everybody's going to get that treatment. But it is what it is. We know what we know, right?
We know what we know. That's right. That's what we're here for. We're trying to learn some new stuff. So, like, what's next on the list? We got Relentless Expansionist. Tell me what that is.
That's the that was the 6-inch move.
That's the one of the custom dynasties. Got it. All right, then Sarah's. What's that? What's he?
Oh, my man. My man. Okay, so I think it's important to talk about, just because of how it builds into it. Saris is he's the one model that we got in Psychic Awakening. He's the one thing, if you bought Psychic Awakening Pariah, he is the only Necron game-oriented thing that was in that book.
I think I actually bought that guy. I actually have him in my closet of models.
And Red, is he the same? Has he changed since Psychic Awakening?
So it's very minute. Yeah, it's very minute changes. I mean, like rights of reanimation, right? Because beforehand he was a regular Crypteks. So it's key to note the differences in Crypteks here. So Crypteks used to give a 3. They had a 3-inch aura where if they increased reanimation protocols by 1, which was a big deal, right? And then they also from 5s to 4s, and you could give them an item, a built-in piece of war gear that gave every infantry unit within 3 inches a 5-up invuln save, right? So it's just important to note that there are now 4 different Crypteks out there. The Technomancers are what everybody would have been familiar with. Rights of Reanimation is no longer +1 to your reanimation protocol roll. It is now choose a unit at the end of your movement phase, and you increase
it's your command phase. It's your command phase.
The command phase. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
At the command phase, choose that unit. You increase them. So if it's a normal and it's core units only, and so that goes into we'll get into that in the bad or the ugly part when we talk about core. But the Saris essentially chooses one, and then he increases. He brings a model back to a unit. If they're warriors, he brings D3 back.
Yeah, and that's the same ability that the Technomancer has, except Xeris can do it twice.
He can do it twice,
just not to the same unit.
So he's kind of like an apothecary kind of.
Yeah. It's very much like an apothecary, and so a regular Cryptek is 75 points, and Xeris is 160 points, and so he's essentially worth 2 Crypteks put together. He has a better weapon. It's actually a pretty, I would say, a pretty awesome weapon. So it's the shooting version is 36 inches, assault D3, strength 8, AP -4, D6 damage.
Yeah,
that's a pretty big gun. The next part, so he's already strength 6. It's in melee. It's AP -4, 2 damage. So, but what comes with him, kind of cool deal, is that he has his old ability that he's always had, where you essentially pick a unit of warriors. It's a Necron core unit within 6 inches.
He's core now. Yeah,
it's core. It used to be just
warriors and immortals.
Yeah, warriors and immortals, right? And so then he chooses them, and you roll on this table for D3. And it's either increased strength, increased toughness, or increased ballistic skill by 1. And so none of those are necessarily bad for what you want, say, like warriors to do. And so I think he's awesome in the regards that you're putting 2 Crypteks together. He does 2 rights of reanimation. He has this ability to buff core units. And then he also, if he kills I was laughing at this. If he destroys a model, 1 or more enemy models, then at the end of the turn of that phase, when he's fighting, he gets to do his like augmentation thing where he increases a core unit by 1 of those 3 things. He gets to do that for free if he just kills a enemy model.
One guy.
And then that just stays for the rest of the game, that buffed up.
Yes.
Yeah, it can only get it once. Every unit can only get buffed once, but it's a permanent buff for the rest of the game.
Wow, like he just pops off with his gun and kills a model. Oh, guardsman, thanks. And then like, my guy's next to me.
And he's a dynastic agent as well, which means he has no dynasty trait, which means he can go into any Necron army.
Correct.
So
Yep. So he's pretty good. I think there's, I mean, again, like, if you're chewing through points and you're trying to figure out something, I think he's really good in that he does that. You don't need two Crypteks necessarily. He can sit between a group of units. He's not necessarily something you just want to walk up on. But other than that, like, I'm not going to say he's auto include, but he's pretty good. I really like
yeah,
him.
I mean, it's also, and I know we said it, but it's worth mentioning, and we'll talk about core, I'm sure, at some point. But Necrons only have 5 core units, but it's Warriors, Immortals, it's Lich Guard, which if you're gonna try to do a Necron, Necrons have to go out into the table now. They can't turtle up. Having some guys that can punch people in the face can be handy, and they can be tuned up by Xeris. That's not a bad thing. Also, Tomb Blades are core, which is interesting because he might be able to tune them up before they run off to go wreak havoc. Run
That's
around
a really
the table.
good point. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so you mentioned Warriors, so you got that in the good list. I've heard mixed bags about Warriors from other groups saying that they're terrible. So like, what makes you think Warriors are good in this new edition?
So real quick, Red, before you say anything, I just want to say I do feel a little slighted that we got a Warrior data slate in Indomitus that looked like a 9th edition thing with this new gun, and now the rules on the new gun have changed.
For the better, though. I can't complain.
So what's the new gun?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the Reaper, right? So the Reaper in Indominus, exactly to Kelly's point. The Gauze Reaper is the new gun. It's got like 2 barrels. It looks pretty cool. It's a little stouter, almost like a carbine kind of weapon for Necrons. It was Indomitus. It was a rapid fire 1, 14 inches. So you had to be within 7 inches to get 2 shots off. Strength 5, AP -2, 1 damage. That sounds pretty good, right? I mean, the range is bad. Like, we'll just agree. Rapid fire 1, 14 inches is bad. They changed it in the Codex. They flipped it on me, man. It's now an assault 2, 12 inches, strength 5, AP -2, 1 damage. That's what it is now.
So it flipped from a 14-inch rapid 1 to a assault 2
12-inch
gun, but the stat 12-inch. Now, my only point though is, again, I was playing Sawtek in 8th, and Sawtek, which we'll talk about later, has what is now a terrible dynasty trait, which is that it rapid fires at 8. All its rapid fire guns rapid fire at 18, right? So that turned that gun into always shooting 2 shots out to 14.
Correct.
So made it a little better than the assault 2 gun that it currently is for Sawtek. And now Sawtek doesn't care at all about that gun. So.
But okay, so on these Warriors, Kelly, did you want to say anything else on the Warriors themselves?
I mean, they got a new gun. Their armor didn't go up, did it?
No, it's the 4.
They're still the same stat line as an 8, but they reroll 1s on reanimation protocols, which
is big. It's big deal.
Which is huge because there's almost just on their own they reroll 1s, and there's and coming again from 8th, there's not a lot out there that buffs the actual during the fighting reanimation that Necrons have been famous for. A lot of those buffs are gone. There's very few sources of them, and that's hardwired into the Warriors, and they do it without spending CP, and they come in giant blocks. So they have the potential to really have a 20-man Warrior unit probably has an effective profile of having about 30 guys in it that you got to kill before they're gone.
Man. So
yeah,
I mean, so I play tested a couple times. First one was against Black Templar. Second one was against White Scars, and I had 80 Warriors in this list, right? 4 units of 20, and it works. Like it's a little obvious in regards of how the mechanic works for reanimation protocols. But obviously, the more models you have, the more survivable the unit is going to be, and more so specifically because of reanimation protocols and how it works, right? And so, whereas it used to be in the command, or essentially the beginning of the turn, you would the movement phase, you would roll. This was 8th edition. You would roll to essentially bring back all the dead units, right, or dead models. And so if you had a unit of 20 and you were down to 3, you rolled 17 dice. Now it no longer does that. Now after every attack, so I've got 20 guys. He shoots me up. I've got 4 guys die. At the end of that attack, like right then and there, after that attack is completed, you go into reanimation protocols. I have 4 dice for the 4 guys that died because they're single wound models, and I roll those. If I get a 5, 5, a 4, and a 1, those 2 5s go off to the side. The 4's done; it's out. I take that 1, I re-roll it, and let's say I get a 3, whatever, it's gone. I just got 2 Necron warriors came back, right? So now I'm now, instead of 16, I'm at 18. And so every single time you go through an attack, it goes through that. So it's better in some cases than, say, like Feel No Pain, because, as you know, you're more than familiar with, you put a damage 3 weapon into a Plague Marine, for example, he's got to roll 3 dice then and there, and he's got to make, all of those dice
two
to
of them,
try and get
yeah.
through it. Right, 2 of them.
Yeah.
Whereas in this case, it's just that 1. You just need to be able to bring the 1 back, and you bring it in. And so what I found, man, is these blocks of 20 were able to hang in there. Now, I know everybody's talking about this or that, and a lot of units in comparison and vacuums and whatnot. I'm not saying warriors are must-haves and the must-take kind of deal, but I'm saying that the silver tide concept of Necrons is a strategy. It is a playable thing. You can do it. It's not as bad as they've
And,
revamped reanimation protocols and the warriors enough to make it good, in my
and,
opinion.
it bears talking about here is that the new stratagems for Necrons, there are a lot of stratagems in there that really that don't say warriors, but they really are good for a unit that's going to put out 20, 30, 40 shots of Gauss in a
Right.
single wave. Thomas, I know Thomas plays Space Marines. The auto wound on 6 that infiltrators have, Necrons have a stratagem to do that with Gauss. So any Gauss unit, you can play a 1 CP stratagem, 6 is to hit, auto wound. Like, that's great. It's good in a unit of Space Marine infiltrators shooting 5 or 10 bolt shots. Think about a unit of 40 Necron warriors firing that at you. I mean, you're going to get some 6s.
So, yeah. No, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. So I agree. The warriors and the warriors have absolute, beyond just that, beyond the reroll 1s on reanimate, they also have all the other. Any buff to reanimate is either as good for warriors or is exclusive to warriors. So, for example, Xeris or a Technomancer, when they use their rights of reanimation, which happen, we talked about it before, it happens in the command phase. You just get a guy back into a core unit, unless it's warriors, and then you get D3 guys back. So Xeris could potentially put as many as 6 warriors back into 2 different units. 3 into one and 3 into another. Ghost arcs also just put 3 warriors back, and it is not rights of reanimation. So you could have a Ghost Arc and Xeris and potentially be putting, or another Technomancer, and potentially be putting 6 warriors back into a unit every command phase. So yeah, people are saying warriors aren't good. I don't particularly know where they're coming from on that.
No, I mean, that's I understand, like, people are looking at it and they're in a vacuum, they're coming up with these circumstances that can take them out and everything, but that's the thing. I watched a warrior squad get knocked down to 4 models. I used a resurrection orb on them. I had brought with my command barge. And so the resurrection orb is a piece of gear that you buy for overlords, and you essentially select a core unit, and in the command phase you get to roll for all the models that have been lost, right? So it was down to 4 models. That meant I rolled 16 dice then and there, and that it's a once per game use of that item, right? So it was one and done, but I still got 7 models back, so that took them to 11. And then Xeris brought 2 more back, so I was now at 13, and I had I had a whole nother wave of 20 Necron warriors just to the side of them. So as they fell back and got out of the fight, these other 20 went into it, and those 13 went to a back objective, and Xeris continued to bring them up. And it was a rotating door of Necron warriors. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, which is what they should be doing.
Right.
That sounds terrible to play against.
It's fun.
I can see some gnashing of teeth. All right, so warriors. It sounds like the core of a good Necron force. You want lots of warriors. I mean, I don't know if they're all built that way, but what other standout units? I mean, we got a couple listed here, and you guys may have some comments about.
Kelly, you can lead on this. You go ahead.
All right, you're gonna make me look foolish here. So
no.
I like I said before, I think the pace and the style of 9th edition missions means Necrons have to be able to play at least a defensive melee game. They have to have something that people don't want to go near or charge into without risk. I think that the Lich Guard are look good. They've always kind of been this dream that Necron players have of actually having a good melee army. But Lich Guard, they're tough 5, they're strength 5, they're 2 wounds, they're 3 up armor, and they have storm shields that are now the same as the Space Marine storm shields, which means they're, if they're standing in the open, they're basically armor 2 because they have a 4 up invulnerable save and they get +1 to their armor saves. They're a Terminator. And they have a power. They have is it a +1 strength power sword, or is it just a regular one? Yeah. So I'm trying to see.
It is a +1 strength. Yeah. So they're strength.
It is a +1 strength. So they're strength 6, and there are all kinds of things you can do to buff them. There's special stratagems to give them +1 attacks. There's the Anrakir the Traveler. Who's again a dynastic agent, so he can go into any Necron army, and he gives a attack buff to core units around him. They're core, so they benefit from all the things that affect core, like the various rules on the other characters. They can be brought back by technomancers. They can be protected by the chronomancers. That all that stuff. They get all the buffs, and they're a nice, strong unit. Now they're an elite, so you can't just build an army around them unless you really take the command point hit. But I think Lich Guard are good. They're not cheap. They're 28 points per model, but that's not bad for a 2 wound model that has a better save profile than a Terminator. Effectively. Similarly, Triarch Praetorians, which I don't know that I've ever seen them in the wild. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody seriously play them. They're cheaper. They're 25 points per model. They fly. They move 10 inches. And they've got a fantastic weapon for killing Primaris Marines. So, the stats for that, Red, better than I do, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and later as we're going to get to them at the end of this list, outside of these standout units, but the Praetorians, man. So they build right into the Silent King, and they have the Rod of the Covenant, I think, is kind of their go-to weapon. It's in shooting, it's a 12-inch assault 1, strength 5, AP -3, 2 damage. And then Rod of the Covenant in melee is user strength, which is strength 5, AP -3, 2 damage. And so, like you said, I think these guys chew through Marines. Sure, it's only 1 shot in melee, but they're moving 10 inches. They're getting around, and again, the Silent King's bonuses all go to them. He extends bonuses specifically to Praetorians, and really makes them shine. I think that they're really good in that regard.
Yeah. And then I think Red and I have some disagreements about what the other good units are. I like the new Ophydian destroyers. I mean, it may be just some nostalgia because they look like the old Wraiths.
I have the old Wraiths. They look awesome.
I have the old Wraiths too, and the Ophydian destroyers look like they're these fast-moving tunneling things. They can essentially do something very similar to the Swooping Hawk Skyleap, although they have to pay CP for it, where they leave the table, go into strategic reserves, and then come back in. They have a ton of attacks. I mean, their base attack 3, and then one guy for every 3 has that many attacks with a strength 6. -4 flat 3 damage weapon, and the other guys have strength 4, -3 2 damage weapons where they're making 4 attacks with that, and then another 2 attacks at strength user -1 damage. I mean, it seems like a good unit to throw into anybody trying to hold the table with blobs, but also elites. I mean, you got great AP. You got some high damage, 2 and 3 damage close combat attacks. They're not an expensive model, and they come in, units of 6. And 3 wounds apiece, so they'll stick around a little while. I think, and we'll talk about Wraiths. I think Red and I both have Wraiths on our ugly list. They seem like they have. It seems like they are the new Wraith. They do what Wraiths used to do, and maybe even better. So
I agree. My problem with them, hands down, and this is where I was talking about before when I was talking about that Rad Wreath dynasty trait, is that in order to make, I don't like Ophidian destroyers in a vacuum. I don't like them just looking at them as they are. You really have to make it work. Like, you have to build your army, build it in. If you're going with Rad Wreath as it is already, I don't think it's as big of a deal, because what you're going to be doing, you're going to be because you're losing certain benefits by not taking that trait anyways, or taking one of the classic traits. And so a kind of thing I think that goes into this is that you open up the door maybe to consider mixing some of the other traits as well. And so if you've got somebody that's, part of your army is Novoke and part of your army is this Rad Wreath deal, the Ophidian destroyers really need to be able to bring toughness down in order to make themselves effective. I think at normal toughness, just strength 4 into strength 4, I think it puts them on par with Wraiths, which I don't like. But I do think being able to bring the toughness down really changes the game for where they're at. I agree. And regards to their attacks, they're destroyers, so they're re-rolling. You bring a destroyer lord with them, they're re-rolling wounds to certain degrees.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot you can make work for them, but you have to get that. You have to cross that bridge together. If you just take them as is, I think it's going to be a struggle.
And just last, I mean, I think I've said my 3, but Tomb Blades were, I think, the secret sauce in 8th edition for a lot of lists. I mean, I think they've only gotten better. They have their own stratagem now, which really, I mean, and again, we'll talk about this in the ugly. I think Tesla's gotten it right in the face. So all paint those guns green now, because Tomb Blades have their own strat now where they can advance, shoot, and their guns become assault.
Unfortunately, we lost a little bit of audio due to some technical difficulties. This covers Red's remarks on Death Marks, his take on Canoptek Spiders, and the Nightbringer. Definitely units you should take a look at, especially the Nightbringer. Man, what a beast. Let's jump back into the conversation midstream on the Silent King and pick up there.
And hope things go the right way and that the right one's active at the right time. His warlord trait is you only pick 4 of them instead of 5, and you can duplicate one of them. So you can my army's all about shooting. I'm gonna do the shooting one twice, and I'm gonna do it on turn 2 and 3 when my guys are in. I mean, he takes all the Necron rules and juices them up, in probably the best way. I mean, I'm sure they want to sell models. This is the way to do it.
It's a big deal.
It is, and he sounds like he's like, why wouldn't you take him?
Yeah.
But he's like 450 points or something, right? So like he's gonna dominate your list.
He can also take with command protocols. So again, he's already only picking 4 of the 6, and he can duplicate. So he's got 2 that aren't used, and then he has the ability to once per battle at the start of the battle round go, oh, I really wanted to use this other one that I didn't pick, and take it and slot it in for that and replace it. I mean, he can just
replace it at will. That's really good.
I mean, could you imagine if Gilliman could just switch the Space Marine doctrine? Hey, I need Devastator this turn. Let's do it. And now you're back in the Devastator doctrine. Like, that's powerful.
Yeah.
And he does that for Necrons. He does the closest thing Necrons have to that.
And tell me if this doesn't sound familiar, Thomas. The Silent King, not only is he a supreme leader, supreme commander dude, so he goes right into supreme command detachment, right, which is going to pay for your battalion's worth of CP or whatever.
Right.
But he also gives an additional 3 CP.
Oh yeah. He's just Gilliman on steroids. It sounds
Maybe
like
Gilliman is the weaker version of this. I think the Silent King is here first.
Right. Now he does unfortunately, unlike Gilliman, he does degrade. So as his wounds come down, he starts losing abilities. So
that's true.
All right.
So get hype.
Get hype. That's right. So that's a lot of good things. We've got through a lot of good things. Is there anything bad? Is Necrons all roses? What do we got here on the bad section? So starting
strong transition. Let's talk about the Silent King's dynasty.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, I mean, it's his dynasty trait not that great. I mean, they have they have a save against mortal wounds.
Which is not bad, given that you can't reanimate against mortal wounds. So at least you've got this to protect you. But the next part is it's just not enough, right? Like in regards of what some of the others do. And so the other part to this is that it allows each time
to
a unit
reroll a
with
wound.
this code, you can reroll 1 wound roll when making that unit's attacks. like one, not it's not each attack. It's just one wound roll out of all the rolls that you make.
I mean, that's just like salamanders, right? Like on the surface that sounds bad, but in the right scenario, I'm shooting 3 shots. I reroll one of the wounds. Like
That's
that,
true.
it ends up being pretty powerful, right? So
It can, yes, it can. So I mean, so that's why it's not in the ugly pile.
just a bad pile.
Could be.
They're not down there with Satek.
That's right. You're not as bad as Satek.
Are you taking the Silent King and then you're just like putting in like the bare minimum detachment to maybe take advantage of that, and then you're like taking a different detachment with him? Is that?
I mean,
is there a
gets
negative
that
reason?
benefit, right? But I'd argue that you don't even need to take a detachment of his stuff necessarily.
Oh, so you just take him in his own, and then he's
because he's a dynastic agent, right? And so
so he can fit in either one. Got it.
He can go into any of them, which is nice. And so now I'll say just on the balance of it, and this is again why it's necessarily in the bad one, not the ugly, is the other stuff that goes with the Zarakan dynasty is its warlord trait isn't bad. It's which the king has, which is good. The relic is really good. The sovereign
crown,
corona. Yeah. I mean, so the relic's really good because it allows you to essentially do what he does again. I thought it was pretty awesome. And then his stratagem isn't bad, which is just another deny, right? So there's a lot of stuff to that. I think it's okay. But yeah, so moving on from that. I know I've got this in bad. I think Kelly, you wanted to put it in ugly for extermination protocols.
Yeah, I mean, I love destroyers. I mean, destroyers. Thomas knows he's played against my Necrons. Destroyers can put out a lot of hurt, and part of that was the 1C stratagem to let them roll hits and wounds.
Yeah, the most efficient thing that I found over my time of playing Necrons, the most efficient thing in 8th edition was that stratagem. 1 CP to allow a unit of destroyers to reroll all hits and wounds. 1 CP. It's baller.
Yeah.
So they took that away.
So now it costs 2 CP, and now you're only rerolling wounds.
Yeah. Now, rerolling wounds looks like a thing that is not very common in 9th edition. So it's it's a thing. As more codexes come out, Necrons may become like, hey, they're the guys that can actually reroll all the 2 wound rolls, and that makes them special again. But it did go to 2 CP, so it's half the punch for twice the price of 8th edition.
And this is Locust Destroyer specific, so it used to be destroyers, and I understand Scorpek had just been introduced and everything, but they've made it specific to the Locust Destroyers.
And if we're talking about ugly for a minute, let's talk about Locust Destroyers. The new heavy Locust Destroyer looks beautiful, but if people don't know, it's just the new heavy destroyer, right? It's the heavy destroyer that was always around, but has a new gun and a new model. But they didn't do the models for the regular Locust Destroyers, which are the old destroyers. They just renamed them. So you have these 20-year-old almost plastic destroyer models for the regular unit, and then the really badass looking heavy destroyer that can go in the unit or can go in his own unit. It's a little sad as a Necron player to get a new codex with all this good stuff in it, and then a critical model that didn't get updated for the edition, at least not yet.
Not yet, yeah. So it is what it is. But so moving on from extermination protocols, we talked about command protocols. I think that it just I really think we hit command protocols pretty well, and the ups and downs on it. And the reason why it's in bad, man, it's just going to take the community a little while to get used to it, in my opinion. There's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
And there's part of that's gonna be player etiquette too, right? Your Necron player is gonna, because they're secret. You don't know what protocols he's doing in what order until they start happening.
I'm getting the cards so I can lay the cards down and I don't have to touch it.
Right. And that's because you're a good player with good etiquette, But we're gonna have a lot of people who have bought up Indominus sets on eBay, and they're gonna just say, I'm gonna scribble it down on this hamburger wrapper, and you're gonna hope that you can read their handwriting. They assure you that it just so happens that when you pulled off your turn 1 assault, they just happened to have the assault thing going on turn 1.
They did. I knew you were gonna assault me, so it's amazing. Tournament 101.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on the hamburger napkins. So
yeah.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the bad, I think one of the other things we have to talk about, and it's a general thing, is that, hopefully everybody's seen Mean Girls, the saying in there is stop doing fetch. Fetch isn't ever going to happen. I'm sure I've got it wrong, but
No,
hey,
you're right, you're right.
GW,
Keep going.
melee characters in Necron armies are not going to happen. So stop trying to make it happen. They gave us the Scorpek Destroyer Lord. He's the exception that proves the rule. But 4 attacks on a destroyer, on a I guess a Locust Destroyer Lord is what he's called now, or what is it? Is it 3 attacks or 4 attacks on an Overlord?
So
they yeah.
Listen, it's better than what it used to be. It used to be 3. It's now 4.
Yeah, it's 4. Yeah.
Everybody went up to 4, which is that's a huge.
But,
I mean, you they're at 133%, man.
Yeah, but I mean, unless you're a Scorpek Lord, you're not getting to strength 8 with anybody, right?
True.
You're never going to wound a knight on a 4. So you're not ever going to be a smash captain. You're just not going to do it, and that's not bad, right? It's not bad. The Tau aren't going to do it either. So I mean, they're not. It's not what they do. Except that GW has seemed to make all these things to buff melee Necron Lords or to make you want to play them, like secondary objectives that involve your lords killing things, or it's sad. It's trying to use everything as a hammer, and you just don't have a hammer.
Not wrong. It's definitely a thing, and we talk more about that in the ugly section for a little bit. But yeah. So speaking of unfortunate HQs, Imhotep, man, how the he's
He used to be like the guy everyone had, right? Imhotep.
He's my favorite.
Dropping the 6 exploding grenades or whatever, lightning bolts, whatever he would. So
you think about this, right? In comparison, Thomas, what happened to Marnius when Gilliman showed up?
Marnius who? That's exactly what happened to him.
That's what happened to that. That's exactly what happens to Imhotep right now. Don't get me wrong; he's got a lot going for him, but is he the Silent King?
He's just
no. Does he cost 450 points? No. He's still he's not a bad infantry overlord character. Pharaon actually, because he can do My Will Be Done twice. His lightning got a little bit of a buff, but he's still just not on par from what he used to be. I mean, he was a Lord of War at one point.
Yeah, he. I mean, and it's right there in the rules too. In 8th edition, Imhotep could do My Will Be Done on any Necron unit, which means you could make him buff, say, Triarch Praetorians. He can't do that now because they've gone back to work for the real boss.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, Thomas, there is one thing about Imhotep that Thomas will appreciate more than probably anybody else. That he can do one thing he can do that Silent King can't do, which is he can still ride in the Stormbird with Rowboat.
Oh yeah, that's Decepticon, baby, Decepticon. So
Silent King, not enough legroom.
Flayed ones, when have they ever been good? I see them on the bad list. I know they're not core, which you kind of wonder, I guess, why aren't they core?
Don't get me wrong, man. So they got a lot going for them. They've got that stratagem, makes them -1 to hit. They go into combat. I mean, they're going to hurt stuff. It's just the problem. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at it. They're not core. So
you can't use reanimation or resurrection. Not resurrect, reanimation. Whatever on them.
Yeah, every unmodified hit roll of 6 in melee scores 1 additional hit, and then while the enemy unit is within 3 inches, they subtract 2 from leadership. And so there's this melee build that we haven't really touched on a lot. I talked about Novoke and everything. There's a Psychomancer that builds off of leadership. There's the Deceivers, Satan power is all about leadership. There's a whole leadership oriented effect that you can work out with these guys, and the flayed ones on top of it. I mean, with 3 attacks per flayed one model with units that go from 5 to 20, it just kills me that they're not core. If there was any one thing that should have been core, you know what, Kelly? I would totally take core away from the Tomb Blades and make flayed ones core before I did the Tomb Blades.
I'd take it away from the Death Marks, but yeah.
Okay, be that way.
I will also say they also have the dubious distinction of being an elite in an army that a lot of the good stuff is in the elite slot.
True.
And they are competing. If you're building the melee build, you're competing for space with the Lich Guard. You're competing for space with lots of stuff that flayed ones just don't. They got better, but they just didn't get good.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think that's exactly why they're in the bad list and not the ugly list. Because I think if you asked me where they were in 8th edition, they were definitely in the ugly list. So if you want to say anything, they did get an improvement.
Yeah.
All right. So what about Ophidian destroyers?
So we talked about those.
Yeah.
They're actually
Yeah.
in Kelly's good list. They're in my bad list and it goes back to the flayed one. It's the same thing. And just like Kelly mentioned with HQs being strength 7, well, they're strength 5 plus 2 for their weapons. Like you really have to plan it's one of the command protocols. It's called the Hungry Void, and it gives you can choose to have +1 strength that turn in melee. And so that puts flayed ones at strength 5. That puts Ophidian destroyers at strength 5. That puts HQs, Necron HQs at strength 8.
8, yeah.
So like, and then you bring in, like I was talking about before, in the good list of the custom traits, you bring in that Rad Wreath ability, and you're minusing 1 to toughness and bringing things down like that. Like that's all gonna it's a snowball effect that you have to build into. And if you don't do that, that's why I think flayed ones, Ophidian destroyers. And moving on to our next one, I think Wraiths are in the same boat. Wraiths they were in the good list, and I mean they were my destruction Carnifex for over a year. And I'd tell anybody that they could still possibly fill that role just because they move quick. They've got a built-in 4-up invuln, which is not as good as what they used to have. They used to have a 3-up invuln. I think Kelly, you probably agree. It looks like GW, except for Gilliman, of course, have largely moved away from 3-up invulns, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They let the
Yeah.
Victrix Guard have it. So Gilman's favorite friends. But yeah, for the most part, it seems like they're making it very far and few between to get 3-up invulnerable saves.
Yeah. And they also went down, their weapon skill dropped to 4 as well.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Wraiths hitting on 4s? Eesh.
Yeah.
All
So
Canoptek now hit on 4s. It hurts. It hurts a lot.
they also, I mean, as a rules and a modeling issue, they made the whip coils. The whip coils used to let them fight after they died, which was a neat effect. Now they're their own weapon, and anybody who's tried to build a Wraith with whip coils, you have my sympathy, because
Man,
I'm
those
sure there are
things are.
pieces of whip coils wherever you have transported your Wraith.
That's right. This is the fiddly bits of model that always breaks or gets caught on stuff or makes the model fall over. Yeah, the whip coil is terrible.
But it's not
Yeah.
as good. Like the whip coils, like if you take them, right? So their
Yeah.
vicious claws are strength +2, AP -2, 2 damage, which puts them at strength 6. Whip coils are their base strength at strength 4,
Yeah.
AP -1. It's just
Yeah, they're just not. I remember Wraiths being terrifying when that new kit came out, and I think somebody at GW has some PTSD or something, and they're just they can't stomp them down for long enough. So
Yeah.
But you said they're 2 damaged. They weren't 2 damaged before, were they?
yeah, they were.
yeah.
Oh.
In
In
wasn't
8th
too
edition,
bad.
they were. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean so with the Wraiths, unfortunately, again, going down from the good list from before, like that kind of wraps up at least what we're going to cover for the bad list now. I think moving into the ugly, we might as well just keep running this nail through the coffin on Sawtech, man.
Yes, Sawtech.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Gosh, man, hurts.
So I mean, because people need to understand that in 8th, a vehicle build was a strong build for Necron.
Because of Sawtech.
Sawtech was the dynasty that let the vehicles move and shoot without penalty.
Right.
Well, nobody needs that, and it's not part of their dynasty trait anymore. And now their dynasty trait is, rapid fire out to 18, and I don't even know what's the other part.
It's I'm pulling it up.
Let's see. It's they reroll morale check. Yeah, that's super exciting thing. So
their leadership 10, man. If you're gonna fail, if you're gonna fail a morale test at the point that you're already leadership 10 and you're at that, like
right.
you're already in need of something else.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, and then big deal. It's morale. Like, who cares, right?
Right.
They are the Ultramarines of the Necron Codex, though, right? They have the most special characters. They've got Imhotep, they've got Xandrek, and Oberon.
And Orkin.
And Orican. Yeah. No, Orican's a dynastic agent now.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he's Sawtech anymore.
Yeah, used to be.
But I mean that, and they do have a good warlord. Let me say that they have the only command regen that Necrons have, command point regen that Necrons have available.
True.
So is the Sawtech Warlord trait. So it's not all bad. They kept that, but yeah, they're that's bad.
Their stratagem is. Go ahead.
Right. Well, because the other thing that's in ugly is Tesla, right? And so their stratagem in 8th was if you caused a wound, it's the same as Katie in overlapping fields of fire. If you caused a wound, you pay command points and you get +1 to hit with the rest of your army against that target. It's what I used to kill knights with Tesla immortals, because you could get the Tesla effect to go off on 4s. So you would hit, every 4 you rolled to hit, you got 2 more hits with a strength 5 gun. Well, I mean, now you're capped out at a +1. You can't ever get it down to that. You can already get +1s pretty plentifully just by playing, Overlords or Pharaons with My Will Be Done. So there's no point in trying to stack the buffs. And then on top of that, they made Tesla cost more than Gauss, for 1 damage AP0 weapons. I don't see a whole lot of point in playing Tesla anymore unless you have to.
Yeah, I agree.
You'd always be afraid of those Tesla things. Now you're saying no one's going to take Teslas all Gauss now?
Well, it's just because it's 0 AP, man.
It's zero AP. That you can't get the number of hits generated as you could before because you can't stack the buffs. And then it also was really good in Overwatch. I know many times in 8th edition somebody would charge me with witches or something, and I would end up doing 14 wounds to them because I get a couple 6s and then the Tesla effect goes off. But who does Overwatch? I mean, that's a whole nother point, which is there's a lot of stuff in the Necron Codex that causes your opponent to not be able to do Overwatch. I think GW is really overestimating people's desire to do Overwatch unless they're playing
Tech. I agree.
Yeah, you really almost never wanting to spend that unless you have some super powerful combination that's going to let you do extra, right?
Yeah. I will say as a quick aside, and this is on my bad list, is that Doomstalker that has like the mini Doomsday cannon on it, the big new model. It actually does get to do Overwatch without the stratagem from its rules.
It has for the greater good. If any unit within 6 inches of it is being charged, it gets to shoot and it gets to use its big gun as if it hadn't moved, which is a big deal.
At BS, well, it's Overwatch, but it's otherwise BS4 because it's a Canoptek unit. So, Thomas, real quick, my earbuds are about to die, so I'm about to switch to the regular mic.
Okay.
So on my iPad, so it should be all right.
So while he's doing that, the Royal Warden with a conduit.
Okay, yeah. Let me get on this train. So, Conduit of the Stars is a Mephrit specific relic, and it only goes to this guy, right? So the Conduit of the Stars is a 36-inch weapon, rapid fire 3, strength 6, AP -2, 2 damage. Sounds awesome, right?
It does sound awesome.
Sure. Yeah, it does, right? Yeah. Why wouldn't you take that? Well, because it's going on a Royal Warden. That's why you wouldn't take it.
Tell me what I don't even know what a Royal Warden is. Give me.
I know.
And you probably never will.
So he's the cool looking immortal dude that comes in the Indominus kit. And the problem is that he's an HQ for like all that I as much as Kelly, and I agree, has said that those elite slots are in high demand for the Necrons, the HQ slots are in equally high demand. And I can't be affording to be putting a Royal Warden in them. If a Royal Warden could do like the, you know how Dark Eldar have that court deal where like they can bring in like the Lamian and the Medusa and the so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I think that Necron should have had something like that. They kind of already do that with the Crypteks, where you can bring in 2 Crypteks in 1 Cryptek slot, essentially. But I think the Warden is one of those. A Warden, a Lord, a Cryptek. I feel like for every HQ that you bring that is like an Overlord or above, I feel like you should be able to bring like 2 advisors, which is like either a Cryptek or a Royal Warden, but you don't. So in other words, there's this dude here who is really kind of difficult to fit into the list. And he has this special relic Gauss blaster. So I explained, the Conduit of the Stars is rapid fire 3, 36 inches, strength 6, so on and so forth. The gun he has base is range 30 inches, rapid fire 2, strength 5, AP -2, 2 damage. It's really not that different. And so are you really going to burn your relic slot on the Conduit of the Stars?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And what the Warden does for you, he allows you to essentially fall back and still shoot and declare a charge, right? Which is cool. It's not a bad deal. But again, we go back to, is this the one guy that you're going to burn one of your HQ slots on? And it's just a hard sell. It's a really hard sell. And so the fact that they made the dynasty specific
Relic.
relic for Mefrit, the one weapon that goes on this one guy, really hurt. I was really kind of surprised that was how far of the rabbit hole they went on that.
All right, so special
so
guys. So
plasma-
you wouldn't even take a separate detachment to just take different slots and add extra HQ slots, or is that still used up?
I think because when you look at the Necron troop choices, like a 10-man warrior squad is 130 points.
Yeah.
A 5-man of Immortals is still 85, I think. And so that's not horrible.
They're 75. They're 17.
Yeah,
for Gauss, because Tesla's more expensive.
That's right. Yeah, right. Another reason not to take Tesla. It's somehow 2 points more expensive. But yeah, so 75, like that's not too bad at 75 points, but those 5 models aren't necessarily going to do that much either. And so it's just tough. And that's where it takes us into these. So there's 4 Crypteks, right? There's a Technomancer, Psychomancer, Chronomancer, and Plasmancer. And Plasmancer is the one that came out in the Indominus kit. And he just pours out mortal wounds, which also, again, up front sounds pretty cool. Like at the start of the fight phase, roll a d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches of this model. On a 4+, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. He's got all kinds of stuff. He actually has a built-in smite effect. It's cool. It's really cool. Unfortunately, it requires that he's within 6 inches of a bunch of other models, and that he doesn't want to be anywhere near. And so
he is not good at combat.
He's
like all Necron characters, he is not good at combat.
Yeah, he has 1 attack, strength 4, T4. There's nothing going on with this guy that would say, like, I really want him to be close enough to anything he needs to kill with mortal wounds that he has to be 6 inches away. And that just hurts. Like, it's just, there's a couple other Cryptek Arcana you can get for him, but I don't know if you got anything else you want to say on it, Kelly, but I just don't see it working well.
No, not at all.
You want to talk on the reanimator? You want to talk about just how bad that is?
So, no, hold on, because I want to think that should have been on the good list, but is also on the ugly list, which is the Doom Scythe, right? So the Doom Scythe, I played a lot of them in 8. The Doom Scythe has been improved, right? The gun is better. It is not D3 shots.
Oh yeah,
3 shots, and it's a bigger gun. It's 12
it's
now.
Awesome.
It's -5 D6 damage +2, right?
The monolith doesn't even have this good damage.
Yeah, I mean the gun is it is a marked improvement over the old Doom Scythe. But the other thing that the Doom Scythe used to do was amalgamated data or whatever, where the 3.
But you had to have 3 of them, right?
You had to have 3, and they had to fly in formation. And point, they kill everything. It never worked, but it would make people counter deploy because they're scared of it. That stratagem is gone. And it's been replaced with a stratagem that when you shoot a Doom Scythe at a unit and play this stratagem, your opponent gets to choose that they either don't get to overwatch or something else, or they can't set for the defensive thing,
defensive terrain or whatever.
Oh, it's why would you ever pay a CP? The new stratagem is called atavistic negation,
and your opponent gets to choose.
So you do it when a Doom Scythe goes to shoot, and you pick a unit within 3 inches of what you shot at, including the target. You can pick the target, and then they can choose. If they brace and they're not a vehicle, take D3 mortal. Okay. So what's the consequence if you don't brace? If you don't brace, you're -1 attack for that unit for the turn, and you can't fire Overwatch or set to defend. So you would only not brace if for some reason the Necron killer melee unit charged 1 Necron per model. So it is so far beyond useless. I have no, I mean, doom sides are good. Doom sides are good on their own, but like their stratagem, might as well be a blank square on
it is a bit of a head
Wholeheartedly
scratcher
agree.
for sure.
it.
Like
Is
what the
like, what game are you people playing?
what's the edge
And-
case where that's going to be like, haha, look at this.
yeah.
No more.
And if you're a vehicle or a monster and you get shot by it, you can brace and you don't take any damage. So,
I guess you wouldn't even pick that unit. I guess, but I mean, I guess you wouldn't
Yeah.
be playing that strat. You're just saving your CP,
Right.
so it's really good because you're just saving CP at that point, right?
That's right. So, anyhow, no. So, Red, yeah, go ahead with the reanimator.
Oh my gosh, man. Okay, so we already talked about the Doomstalker, which so they've unleashed these new, War of the Worlds kind of walker deals, and so this Canoptek reanimator, it has a new. So there's no other way. Like I talked about, seems like years ago at the beginning of this session, um, about how rites of reanimation used to give +1 to reanimation rolls. Now the only way to get that, consistently is through these Canoptek reanimators. They are of course, they are an elite slot. They cost 110 points. They're T5 and they have 6 wounds, which means um,
Heavy bolters will kill them quickly.
heavy bolters will kill them. An eradicator's like a stiff breeze from a fart from an eradicator will take this guy out. He has no invuln. He has no protections. He's not a character or anything like that. He's a monster.
Not core.
Yeah, there's nothing. And yeah, not core, nothing. There's just nothing really going for this guy that's going to make him. And he is the best way to give any. It's not even core units. He just picks a dynasty unit, a friendly dynasty unit within 6 inches, and gives them a +1 to their reanimation roll, which could be great in a ton of cases.
But he has to be, what is it, 9 inches and line of sight?
Yeah, 6 inches and line of sight.
6 inches, so he can't be hidden behind a building.
But
he has to have line of sight.
He can if that unit is kind of stretched out towards him, right? Like, I mean,
Sure,
he can be behind the wall,
sure.
but I guess line of sight, that does kind of make it a little bit tricky. But I
Yeah,
feel like that's strong enough to kind of warrant messing around with,
Did you ever think there was something that, like a vehicle or monster, that you could just outright kill with like your Thunderfire cannon? Because this is it.
Because here he is.
Not anymore. Have you seen the Thunderfire cannon? That thing ain't killing anything.
It's probably a good point, but still, man, this was such a, like, it is actually mathematically worth it to just bring more bodies instead of
trying to shoehorn his extra +1 in.
Yeah. So that's the unfortunate part about the reanimator. It hurts, man. It hurts. Now let's go to literally the worst unit in 40K.
Wait. We also got to say there's another blank stratagem, and that's this guy's stratagem, because he has a stratagem.
Oh, true.
Wait, back up one more about the, because like Space Marines, for example, like all the smoke grenades and smoke launchers, they move that to a stratagem that you trigger. The reanimator, you have to designate who's reanimating command phase in your command phase, which is not usually near when your opponent's going to make choices about shooting, right? And all they have to do to not let you get the buff is not shoot that unit, because he can only affect one unit at a time. It's worse than like the demons having to tell you which guy gets the buff to the invulnerable, not to shoot that unit.
Yeah.
Oh man. So he only gets above that, and then they have a stratagem for the reanimator that is a reaction stratagem that lets you change the beam to a different unit after they've been targeted, but it of course takes the beam off of the first unit. So you're paying a CP to get a reactive defensive thing out of this guy, assuming you're in the right place. So another very questionable stratagem choice.
Yeah,
I mean, if you get to change it, I think it's not terrible if you're set up for it. But yeah, it is kind of sucky.
He's not. Yeah, no. You just should buy another squad of warriors.
All right, so the Obelisk, like, wasn't that the worst unit in 40K before?
So in 8th edition, there was this massive. It was on one of the Facebook groups. They did this. It was a pretty big poll where they went down like
Last year,
literally
40K
a
or whatever.
bracket of
Yeah.
the worst unit ever, right?
And
And
Obelisk won, right?
somehow the Obelisk won.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
still top of the tops.
Oh my gosh, man. This is okay. So it's a Lord of War, and it's not like, the Silent King who gets to go into Supreme Command. So if you're familiar with it, the Lords of War in the super heavy ox and everything, they just don't do well. They don't get a lot of benefits because this thing has 28 wounds, so it gets no benefit from obscuring or dense terrain or anything like that. So uh almost nothing really. If anything, things got worse. Its abilities. It got one that's better. This hovering sentinel deal is new to these models, where in your movement phase, if it stays still, its weapon goes from being Tesla, right? It's still Tesla before, but that's why we all like understood this is part of Kelly's thing on why Tesla's so bad. Um, it moves up in strength. It becomes strength 8. It still doesn't get any AP. It's just increases its damage characteristic, but it just hurts, man. It like Tesla with you're talking a strength 8 weapon, assault 6, 2 damage, but no AP. I mean, like a guard could shrug that off, Um,
Yeah.
it's just rough. It's got gravity pulse, which is the same thing it had, which targeted fly units. But I think the range is actually diminished and it's not as good as it was. It's more against aircraft now than it was just fly units. And so again, it's a Lord of War that just doesn't do that much. And it really hurts.
How many points is that thing?
Well, it's 19 power level, which I know that doesn't really matter that much, but just as an idea of how bad it's going to be. Yeah, so as
the
we
Obelisk is
370 points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No thanks, huh?
No,
Sun King is
they're not-
450, like
It's
those two on the
450,
scale.
yeah.
It's 10 more than the monolith.
Yeah, exactly. And the monolith is arguably could. It sucks that the monolith is a Lord of War. I think that is probably its biggest disadvantage, but the monolith does have some really good stuff to it.
So you can get the Silent King. You could get an Obelisk and a Royal Warden, or you could get the Silent. It's your choice. You can have Obelisk and a Royal Warden, or you can have Silent King. So
Bad and ugly
look at it that way.
equals good, right? That seems like good math.
I mean, okay. Let me do. Silent King is actually 5 points more expensive than that, but it's close.
Yeah. Oh man.
Wow, so we really kind of covered the gamut here. So kind of anything else on the list of ugly before we kind of close it up and kind of give the overall thoughts of the book? Like, after going through it all, are you still excited about it? Do you think Necrons are going to be good? I mean, comparing it just to the Marine book, how does it fare? How does it compare to the old Necron book? After playing some 9th edition games, what are your thoughts on all those things?
Go for it, Kelly.
I mean, it's Necrons don't have 100 data sheets like the Space Marine book does. So it is a. I think there are more builds in this book than there probably. So that's good, right? Because variety makes a faction interesting. It makes more people want to play it. Makes you want to play it more because you can play around with more stuff. It's not which tank do I slot? How many of this tank and how many slot in? There are different builds that have potential. And there's new stuff. So, there's lots of stuff I'm sure we haven't figured out or that we said was bad and ended up being pretty. But, I'm excited to put some Necron. I think they haven't changed enough that I have to buy an all new army, which is nice. And, there are units that have been around for a while, like, have been neglected because they just didn't work well with the army that I think work better now. So there's a reason to go get some of those cool looking kits that, might have been fun to put together and paint, but, would be embarrassing on the table and might do. So, I mean, I think there's some stuff there. I do think that people playing Necrons in 8th, moving to 9th, you probably have to sit down and overhaul what you're like. You got to start from a blank piece of paper and figure something out, start seeing what.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm really excited. I'm super excited. I'm gonna pick up the Silent King this weekend. I'm really looking forward to putting them together, and it's really fun to just in the games I've played, watching the warriors really hang in there and everything, it's pretty rewarding. I agree completely with what Kelly's saying. In light of what we have to compare it against, I think the Necron Codex is really balanced. We didn't talk about it much, but the royal court rule that is built into the Necrons, you have to defer by according to rank within the Necrons on who gets to be the warlord. So like if the Silent King is present, like he's automatically in charge. If so and so is present, Pharaon, like
yeah.
Imatek, like they have to be in charge unless the Silent King is there, and it goes down in rank and whatnot. It'd be crazy if like a similar codex that came out at the same time was also had like a military structure to it,
Yeah.
and say like a lieutenant couldn't be the warlord when you've got like a chapter master sitting next to him or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting if somebody did that.
Yeah, it'd be like they like kind of bake the fluff into the game that kind of
Yeah. As
weird,
opposed to
weird
letting just
concept.
people choose whatever they want, and it's all core anyway, so who cares?
Yeah.
Now they did do that for Gilliman. If you choose him,
Oh, Gilliman got it. Okay.
not that you would never. If you take a Gilliman, you would make him your warlord because he gives you all these extra things. But yeah, he does have that rule too. Like if he's leading the battle, he ain't following a lieutenant, right? He's the boss. So.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm glad that Gilliman at least knows how to take charge. The rest of the guys are all listening to the apothecary.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard you're good.
Yeah,
I'm standing next to you. All right. Well, any closing thoughts? Anything else before we wrap it up?
I mean, I look forward to seeing what people come up with. There's a lot to this. I guess one thing I really want to go with is, I like the format that you guys have with the show, with the good, bad, and ugly. But I would say for if you're for you listening out there, there's a lot of stuff to experiment and play with this. Don't let yourself get hung up with one way or the other. It's a whole new edition. It's a whole new codex. Play test it, and if you've got stuff that you like put it on the table and get it out there. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's fine. I hope that if anything that we said was helpful, then I'm glad that you got to listen to it.
And, I'm excited to get abused by some units of Canoptek spiders. So I'm ready to be proved wrong about it.
Oh, I'm gonna make it happen now.
Red said they were good. Yeah, you heard it here first. Canoptek spiders, the hidden charm. So we love that you're listening. I hope that you stuck through this whole thing. It's a little bit longer than our last Marine video, but we wanted to kind of give you a little bit more in-depth talk about the Necron, so you can kind of jump right in. Love to see your comments. Did we miss something? Are these guys crazy and they got it all wrong? Let us know in the comments. If you like what we're doing, hit subscribe, share it with your friends. And join us next time. This is Thomas from Pro Tabletop, joined by Red and Kelly. Signing off, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Yeah.